agreement terminology. And then we have a break, and then at 11 we're going to talk about the actual topic. Well, how does what I'm telling in the first half generalize to other parts of speech? Okay, so this is for those who have no introduction to linguistics, so just some terminology to keep following the talk. So here we have some different types of sentences. So some of them, they differ in like how many arguments they take. And this is the property that is called valency. So the first example, which is, it just means it rains, and in some languages it doesn't have any subject at all. So in those languages it takes 0 arguments, and it's called intransitive. Then we have the cat sleeps. It has only 1 argument, which is the subject, so that's called intransitive. Transitive verb takes 2 arguments, so they eat food. We have the subject they and the object food. And finally, ditransitive takes 3. It has argument number 1, which is the subject. Then we have direct object food, and then we have some indirect object, we usually call it. So, and then just if you're wondering what are those weird symbols, that's the null 0 segment. That's a useful abstraction sometimes to write it, even though there is nothing there. We will see it many times during this talk. So I just labeled the arguments with numbers, but they usually have names. So we call these, when we're talking about syntactic roles, we call the doer argument a subject, and then we call the object or direct object is this: they eat food, she gives food, and then indirect object is the one who receives the food in the ditransitive, like she gives food to me, so then me is the indirect object. So these are syntactic roles. Sometimes we also talk about semantic roles or thematic roles, in which, so these may or may not correspond to the syntactic roles. Like, so he would say that, well, if the cat sleeps, like it's not really a super active agent, it's just kind of experiencing the sleep. So we call it an experiencer. But then for this transitive and ditransitive verb, like if they eat food, then the they is the agent and the food is the patient. Like, and then also in the ditransitive case, we also have agent and patient. And then if we have something that gets passed to someone, then that's called a theme. And we have also lots of other things like instrument, goal, source, location, that kind of stuff. But there was a brief, these were like flashed briefly in yesterday's talk about the lexical library. So these could be important in more semantic applications. But why I'm mentioning it here is because this is a common combination in some contexts. Even when we're talking about syntax, it's important to distinguish between the only argument of an intransitive verb and the doer argument, like one of the 2 arguments of a transitive verb. So then we borrow the word agent from the semantic roles. So we say that when the cat sleeps, the cat is a subject, but when they eat food, then they is an agent, not a subject. So then the food may be object or patient. It's really the same thing. I'm introducing the word patient because I'm gonna show you some resources, and it's the same thing. Yeah, and in this presentation, I'm trying to use object, but if I mix it up and if I say patient at some point, just mentally replace it with object. Okay, that was the terminology. And now let's talk about agreement. So that's the property where the verb's arguments are marked in the verb form. So right, like here is just standard English. So the first person singular doesn't have any marking. So again, we mark it with a 0. And then the third person has this suffix s. So I sleep and the cat sleeps. So that's one argument, the subject or agent. That's it. Actually, they coincide in English. So then in other languages, we might mark more than just one argument. So here's an example from Hungarian. These forms, olvasok and olvasom, they both have first person subject or agent, but the difference in the form is in the object. Oh, I just got an email. Sorry, I got an email from someone asking the Zoom link for this. So sorry about this. I'm gonna send it. I want more audience. Okay. Okay, so let me find the link and let's resume this talk. And find the okay, now I've lost my Windows. Okay, great. So sorry about this distraction. So these forms, olvasok and olvasom, they both have first person subject, but the difference is what is the subject / agent, because it's also difference in the object. So in this case, if the same verb, you can use it intransitively or transitively. So if it's intransitive, then you always use this form olvasok. If it's transitive, then so this is the form where you have first person agent and an indefinite object. And this is the form where you have, again, first person agent, but a definite object. So it's different, makes a difference. The object makes a difference in the verb form, not just the agent. So let's talk about the argument marking in a bit more detail. So in all of these examples, I'm talking about languages that may have like very complex inflection tables, but I will only consider person marking. So, consider whatever language like this, we're only looking at the present indicative just to make it simple. So the first possible combination. Oh, wow, I have audience. Welcome, those of you who woke up at 4 a.m. So we can mark 0 arguments. And so World Atlas of Language Structure tells me that of their sample of 378 language, about 82 don't mark person. Again, they might mark like tons of other features. So then in GF, the inflection table would be as simple as that. So let's go to more interesting combinations. How about we mark 1 argument? So here's a question for everyone who is following. So how many different strategies? If you want to commit to your guess and type the number in chat, let me know. Otherwise, just guess a number in your head and check afterwards how it went. And again, we're talking about 1 argument. So if you're saying like, well, just we're getting late. Let's see the marked arguments. No, we have a guess. We have guess 1. Let's brave of you. Let's see how it went. Okay. We have a guess 4. So let's see who wins. Okay, we can mark argument. We can mark the agent. So yeah, this English does this. So in a transitive sentence, we mark the agent and not the patient. So I drink water and the cat drinks water. It's, you know, it's only affected by I and the cat, not by the object. And in this sample, we have 73 languages that mark only agent. So there were 82 that didn't mark person at all. Right, so this is the comparison. So it's actually even less popular than, than the previous one. I don't know how balanced this data is, but I suppose they put some effort into balancing it out. So how do we mark this agent marking thing? How do we write it in GF code? So this is like exactly English. This is like no modifications, just plain ordinary English. We have some param for agreement, and then the link at for the lexicon, it has an inflection table where this agreement is on the left-hand side. And then in this syntactic functions, there we have the agent is open in both the lexical verb and the verb phrase. And then yeah, we see that when we build a verb phrase with from a verb and this object, it just keeps the inflection table and it puts the string there. So the agent is kept open, and then it's only chosen when we add the agent, the doer argument. So this is ordinary English. You've probably seen GF grammars like this before. So now let's think about the object marking. So we can imagine a language like English, except that it marks the object and not the agent. So now we say that I drink me. Well, that happens to be grammatical also, but the cat, I drink me and the cat drink me. They are both marked with the 0 because of the object. And then we say I drinks water and the cat drinks water because they both have the S because of the object. So this is not unheard of strategy. We have 24 languages of the sample that they mark only one argument, and that is the object. So a bit of comparison for how these 3 different strategies. Right, so 1 for no arguments, 2 so far for 1 argument. So those who guessed 1, you were wrong. Those who guessed 4, well, we're halfway there if we're getting there. Exciting. So if we look at the object marking in GF, so if you're looking at this, like, did I copy and paste the wrong slide? So that is indeed the same. The lexical categories are indeed same as in the version for agent marking, but the difference is in the rest of the code. So the V2 and NP are actually same as before, but now it's the compo VP is different because we already here we choose the agreement, and it's the argument to the V2, like it's already the compo V2 which takes V2 and NP, and it's that NP which dictates the agreement. And then we get pred VP, like, well, there is nothing left to choose because yeah, VP's linked is just a string and not an inflection table. So what we do, just concatenate the agent and the VP. So this is, yeah, this is like English, but object marking, like it's I literally changed nothing in the lexicon, just in the syntax. And then we get this, I drinks water and the cat drink me. So if we repeat the question, yeah, there was actually no guesses but just 2. So like, I can't be like, haha, gotcha. But yeah, so there are more, because we have another dimension, another question, like how do we mark subject?
So to come back to the original question, what is the answer now? So 3 or?
Oh, right. Sorry. I mean, so far, so the original question like this, how many different strategies to mark one argument? And we have now looked at least 2. Like the third one was just mark 0 arguments, like how many languages in the World Atlas of Language Structures do that, well, in that sample from there. Yeah, sorry if that's confusing, because I'm showing these maps with like different numbers, but they are in different.
Zero count.
Yeah, no, because I mean that's the answer for that is definitely 1. Like how many different strategies are there to mark 0 arguments? Well, that's 1, because that's the only thing to do. But like, I mean, this was a bit of a trick question, because I've only shown you transitive verbs so far. So then like I mean, you might, if you feel like I was unfair there, you can say, well, 2, because like, you know, but now the new dimension I'm introducing here is how to mark subject. And so like, yeah, in the GF code I showed you, like I had very strategically hidden the intransitive verbs from there. So now we're going to look at this. And this is called the alignment of argument marking. So just to recap, now this becomes important. Like, I mean, I've already been talking about agent, but like now this is where it actually becomes important, because we, like in English, the subject and agent behave the same, but they don't necessarily do that in all languages. So let's look at how do these align. I'll put it more formally in just 10 slides or more, but just bear with me. So in this, we're still in mark 1 argument section. So again, in a transitive, we can mark the agent like this. Verb agrees with it, you eat food. Or we can mark the object. So you eats food and it eats because of food. So the object is marked in the verb form. And yeah, again, we're not marking both, we're coming to this later. So what we didn't look at before is the subject, is it never appears with agent and object at the same time, because that's kind of logically, it can't appear with object, because we define that subject is only for intransitive verbs. So if it appeared with an object, then it would be an agent. And also, well, I'm sure you can pull out VerbNet and show me like a bunch of frames where this happens, but like if we just look at this pure syntactically, like you can't really, the subject doesn't appear with agent, because it's like either it's an intransitive which takes a subject, or a transitive which takes an agent. So this subject, this cat, is actually like, it can do whatever it wants. So it can be marked or unmarked independently of agent object. So this is the alignment of argument marking. Good morning, Lionel. Oh, actually, good evening. It's like night there, but yeah, so the alignment is whether the subject aligns with agent or with object. So so this is the first that's how English behaves. That's the first example that we've seen so far. So we mark agent, and subject is like agent as in marked. And a few examples, like this many languages involves do that. And yeah, some of these languages which are in the resource kernel library, we've got, kind of a lot of the common big European languages behave like this. So really most of the languages in the GFRGL are like this, but not all of them. Again, if we keep marking agent, then the subject might also decide to follow the object and be unmarked. So that's not quite as common. Then we have like 9 languages. Well, I chose very stupid font coloring because I can't see a thing. But so that's 9 languages of these, almost 400. And none of these are in the resource kernel library. If you're wondering where this data comes from, that's a combination map from this World Atlas of Language Structures. So one is, we have 100A is the feature of which arguments to mark, and 100A is the alignment. Okay, so then we can do the object marking, where the subject aligns like the agent, so it's unmarked. And here we've got 18 languages, and still none of them in the RGL. Not yet. And the fourth alternative for these, so we're in this section, mark 1 argument. We're getting to mark 2 arguments soon. So, but if we just mark 1, then we can mark object and mark subject, just like object, which is 6 languages. So we had 1 guess for 4. Now, are we done yet? Can you think of another example? I think our linguistics professor dropped out of the call, like, oh, this is like super boring.
So just to get that right, so you said we can have alignment according to the syntactic criteria, which is the subject-object marking.
Yeah.
We have an alignment according to semantic criteria, which is the agent.
Oh, right. Sorry. Like, so the question. Okay, so question was like we can have. The question was like this distinction about the syntactic and semantic. So, okay. So the terminology, like, basically the. Yeah. Okay. Not sure. Not quite sure what you meant, but so like the terms that we generally use with this agent, subject, object. Like, it's just like, in order to make the difference between those 3, we have just borrowed a word from the thematic, like semantic roles. But like, then to the other question, like, can we separate the alignment by semantics? We actually can, which is the next strategy. So, so the next strategy is that we mark argument and we change which argument is marked based on some semantic criteria. So here in this example, like if the subject is more animate than object, because you is usually a person and food is usually a plant or something. So then we mark the subject. Like if you're eating something that is more animate than you, then that's like, I don't know. If like a slime is devouring some human, maybe that's you mark it differently. But yeah, so then if we if we had this this situation here where the object is more animate than the subject, then we actually mark the object. Or sorry, agent. Sorry, yeah, if the object is more animate than the agent, then we mark the object. So you eat food, we mark you again, but if it's food eat you, then we mark you. We mark you in both cases, and that's a semantic criterion for the alignment. Or actually, right? Sorry. This is not directly alignment. Like we can also do, but this is just like syntactic criterion for argument marking, like which argument to mark. Yeah, I'm kind of like mixing up, because like in some case, like the first 4 was like one dimension was the alignment, but then this 5th one, like alignment is not even a dimension. It's just like yet another strategy that depends on. So we could, if we want to be a bit more rigorous, we could say like, okay, 1, always mark the agent, 1B marks subject like agent, 1A subject like agent, 1B subject like patient, and then 2 always mark the object, and then again the subcategories, and this would be 3, where like we don't do the always mark 1. We do like sometimes mark 1, sometimes mark the other, based on semantics. Yeah, if I give this presentation again, I'll probably name them like 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and then 3. Makes sense. And there are 6 languages like this in the sample, and none of these in the RTL either. But so this brings me to the bit of homework. So if you want to write like a mini grammar, or like, just not even the full mini research, but just a tiny little example that is enough to show these differences, like this would be a fun little let's learn linguistics via GF project. I even have a repository with some exercises for this. I'll link to that later. So these options here, they cover only 185 languages. So we still have more than half left of these, just of this Waltz sample. Before I talk about marking 2 arguments, do we have any questions about what we've seen so far?
So Simon, sometimes so you have languages like French, for example, which mark the first and second person differently. Yeah? So like I go and you go are marked differently in the verb. And so I just often wonder which verb form to use if you say I and you go, for example.
Yeah, right.
Because,
yeah.
So you can try to do that on syntactic criteria, which somehow does not give you a unique solution for the verb form. But you can try to do it on a semantic basis, that you use some sort of first person plural or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The question was about like if we have a language that marks persons different, and then when you say I and you go, then how do you conjugate the verb? And yeah, I think like I suppose this is more of a semantic criterion. Like if it's like, if you're saying like you're treating the I and you basically as an inclusive we, then you would just inflect it like a first person plural.
So I do not know what the let's say official answer of French grammarians is, but would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure that like these kind of questions would be very annoying for like hardcore prescriptivists who think like, oh, you need to write correctly and there can be no ambiguity, and then like real life is full of this kind of stuff. Like in GF grammar we have like, I mean, yeah, we just have some rule for the like in the conjunction, the coordination module, like we just have for every language, like you can decide like which agreement to take if you put a list of NPs together, or like that's I mean, it's not perfect because there is always some kind of semantic edge case, but like but yeah, usually we just say that and makes the noun phrase plural and or keeps it singular. And of course, if there is still, if it's actually conjunction between pronouns, then like, who knows? But yeah, that's fun side track. So now we are going to marking the 2 arguments. So you can, let's play this game again. It was so much fun. I have even more games for you. Like, if you want to think of a number, you can put it in the chat. And you feel free to disagree with me. Like that was actually call me out if like I'm saying something completely outrageous. Like if you're okay. So we had an answer very many. So let's see how will that go. Okay, so let's just introduce the problem. So yeah. So we mark both the agent and the object. So the actual English doesn't really do justice for this. So just imagine that the colorful squares are some kind of morpheme. So green square marks agent and purple marks patient, object, whatever. So now we're just, you know the trick. I'm going to talk about alignment already. So without the alignment, the answer would be kind of like, well, 1 because you mark both, and then 2 because you mark it like different case sometimes, like that. But now we have the alignment, so we can have more interesting stuff. So yeah, this is the first option. We mark agent and object as established, and we treat the subject like the agent. So this is actually the most popular strategy in the Walls sample, which I believe some thought has been put into making it balanced. So yeah, there's a bunch of languages here. And some of them are in the RGL. So we have Hungarian, we have a bunch of Bantu languages. We don't have really that much representation in the other side, like the rest of the world, but we have like this time zone where it's 4 a.m. right now, pretty well covered in GF. So like, yeah, I guess not too much to comment about that. Like I have a blog post where I actually include tons of GF code, but like I decided to keep that simple because in the next part of my talk, I'm gonna show you so much GF code that like I'm gonna spare you from, I'm just gonna show you pretty maps, okay? Okay, the logical choice is that since we're marking both agent and object, so then the subject is marked like the object. So the subject of the intransitive verb is marked like the object of the transitive verb. And so if those of you who are more, if you're new to linguistics, if you haven't seen this before, so let's take an example of this strategy. So this is an example from Basque. And in these two sentences, the word ni, the pronoun ni, is a subject in the first one, an object in the second one. And if you're thinking like, oh, that's because Basque has no morphology, it's so easy. Like, no, that's not the case. So now we have the same pronoun here as an agent. So I just made this sentence about me because I didn't want to introduce so many new words in Basque, and I thought that you all know my name. It's just because I'm a huge narcissist. I can't even pronounce the word. So here, okay, so now we're just looking at the subject case, like the noun cases, but we're soon gonna move to looking at the verbs instead. So yes, there is certainly evidence that the agent has this morpheme K, and the subject and object is unmarked. Okay. Yeah, so now that we're talking about verb reflection, let's look at the verb forms. So with this information, you should be able to play linguistic detective and guess what would be the verb form for saying just Inari is. And you can assume that the verb is perfectly regular because, I mean, the right answer is not regular, but if you give me the right answer, that suggests me that you looked up the answer or you know Basque. So let's see if you're awake and Let me annotate this a bit so it's easier. So you see that the transitive verbs encode both agent and object, and the intransitive encodes just the subject. So let's give you next hint. So the dictionary forms of these verbs. So if you look up in Basque dictionary, like this would be the infinitives or whatever they use for that. So if you're looking for trying to separate them into roots and affixes, that might help you a bit. I'm gonna give you 20 seconds more and then I'll reveal the answer. Oh no, I forgot to count the seconds, but I'm sure it's gone already. So if we were completely regular, we would expect to get this form. Yeah, yes, we had an answer a bit late in the chat, but yeah. So if we were completely regular, that would be the expected form. And that's because we can see, so we had the dictionary form also to help us, the isan. So we see from this first one that the first person subject is marked with this morpheme na right here. And that's the same morpheme na appears in this Inari Nauka. So the first person object is marked with that same morpheme. So we can, just from this similarity, we can deduce that when the first person is subject / object is marked before the verb stem. And I gave you the dictionary form, so you had the verb stems there. So, and then from this we have the transitive Inari Daukat. So we can assume that, okay, we can also like just remember the genre. This is like a puzzle, very selected puzzle given to you, not just like wild data. So you can assume that it's behaving nicely. So so we can assume that the da is still marking the object now, because na was also marking the object. And then the t you can just ignore like this. That's just because the third person doesn't have, when the third person is an agent, then it doesn't have a morpheme, but you can ignore that bit. So from this information, we have by analogy gotten the third person morpheme for subject / object. So that's what gives us the expected form. But like, of course, real language is irregular, so this is the actual form is even shorter. So it's like no verb stem at all, just the morpheme that marks that it's a third person subject / object. Yeah. So anyone who didn't fall asleep, you can. And so, yeah, so my goal with this puzzle was just to give you an intuition to the, like, what does it mean, mark the subject the same as the object? So that's what it means. And as you can see from the map, it's not quite as popular, but 11 languages from the sample do that. And we even have one in the RTL, that's Basque. So yeah, still on the same time zone as. We're like diverse in the strategies, but not in time zones. But okay, so we had guesses, very many. So yes, we're not done yet. So we had the two basic options. So of course we can always have the option, well, you know, sometimes one and sometimes the other. So for example, so like in this case, let's suppose it only depends on syntactic phenomena. So if, like, just for instance, in present tense, we mark the subject like agent, and in the past tense, we mark the subject like object. That's a possible thing that happens. Like, yeah, it can be any other thing too. Like, for instance, let's say in positive sentence, mark like object, and in negative, like subject, like anything like that. But the point of why I made this into one category is because it's all syntactic phenomena. So that makes it actually infinitely more easy to implement in GF, because it's like, you know, you have the RTL and you can just, you know, from all these different constructors in the tree, like, is that, well, am I in the past tense or present tense? Well, I have this, I can just put the parameter in this node of the tree, and I know. Is it positive or negative? Well, I have this category polarity, and I can just make a parameter of that. So that's much easier. Or I mean, like that is not a problem at all. So, right, so there is, in this sample 23 have some strategy like this. So yeah, maybe I'm not quite sure like what's the range of these, but I think these are based on some syntactic criteria. And none of these are yet in the RTL. So those of you guessed very many, so I'm actually just gonna lump the rest together. Like, okay, so there are more, but like, so there is one logical choice which is not at all common. So that, you know, why would we mark subject the same? Why would we align the subject? Because it can be different. All three can be different. That's an option. But I think, yeah, I think that's not really, like, as far as I know, like, no language is doing that fully. Like, there can be some language like would do it like, okay, so maybe we just do it for one pronoun in very specific circumstances. But like, as far as I know, there is no language that does this like consistently for everything. And then we have the more difficult thing that we mark the subject, like, you know, we align the subject differently based on semantics. And that's kind of a headache, because if we do it in the RTL, we can't just we can't just look at some node in the syntax tree that says that, like, as easy, like, are we in the, is this negative or positive? Well, because I have this polarity parameter, it tells me.
Did you have examples of that? Just to know which semantic criteria can influence the...
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm just quoting Walls here. It says, depending on a range of semantic factors such as eventhood, performance/effect, instigation, control, and significant affectedness. Like, I have actually no clue what it means. Like, I'm not like that kind of linguist who goes deep into that. Like, I'm the kind of linguist who just spends 11 years like getting very good at one library. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I got lazy here because I thought, okay, we need a break before I'm gonna go and show you so much GF code that, like, you're but yeah, so like 31 of the rest of this sample is using some other twist, which you can go and read the Walls map yourself. And again, it's not just maps, it actually has these explanations, but yeah. So so this concludes the first part of this talk. So I have like as a companion to my blog post, I have this tutorial on GitHub with actual GF code of, we have both the like English, but, and then we also have some actual languages like Hungarian and Basque, like simplified versions from the actual resource commerce. So it's actually possible to read it and understand it. And if you want to see more maps and information, you can go to Walls, and then you can, yeah, you can read my blog post if you like, if you were interested in this part, like it's more examples, more GF code stuff. So let's take a 12-minute break and resume at 11. Any questions, or maybe the questions come after I just drown you in GF code, but like
And you started doing that this last week?
Hello. So it is 11. Oh, it's 11 o'clock. So, so we are back from the break. And now follows the actual topic. Like, I mean, this presentation is kind of like my blog post because this is the part I actually started writing back like 2 years ago. Like I was in Hamburg and my train had gone and I was like sitting in the McDonald's of Hamburg like all night, and then I started writing this blog post. So, and I still haven't written the third part, but this presentation is the third part. Okay, so welcome back. Starting the presentation. Oh yeah, I'm unmuted. I have my video on. Great. So in the first half, I was telling you in general, like, what is agreement? This is like intralinguistic stuff, but with a bit of GF twist in it. So that was all about verbs with the subject, object, agent. Well, so these were all core arguments, but now I'm gonna also extend this to other arguments, so let's see. We've seen core arguments like these: subject, object, indirect object, and whether or not we split subject to subject and agent. Like this is again, like we can pretty much actually forget alignment for this part of the talk. I just added it to the first part because I thought that's a cool thing, and it's another of these things that often people who don't know GF would say, like, but how about ergativity? How about alignment? Can you do that in GF? How come you're saying that you have a completely abstract thing, but can it represent this? And then, like, sure. So we're not going to talk about alignment here anymore. So I'm just going to say subject and drop the agent. So, right. So these are core arguments. So yeah, the owner gives food to the cat. And they are often marked with like cases, like nominative, accusative, that kind of stuff. And in the verb reflection, like we've just seen. So then, like all the other things that might appear in a sentence are often called obliques. Like it's a pretty like wide category of things. Like you might want to say, like you might want to be more specific sometimes, like, oh, I want to talk about locatives, whatever. So then you would only talk about this at home. Like, but yeah, obliques is just anything that is on the core argument. And they are often marked with adpositions in languages that have them, or like non-core cases. Yeah, I mean, like if we think like core cases would be like nominative and accusative and dative in language like German, for instance, then non-core cases would be something like locative cases or instrumental cases. I mean, depends on if your language has these or not, or you can just use prepositions or both. But like the point here is like these are not commonly in the verb inflection. So why am I talking about these if I'm talking about agreement? So my thesis is like we are going to go beyond verb inflection. So like, like, is it boring? Like, why should agreement be only about verbs? So I'm going to define this extremely ad hoc GF specific definition that if an orthographic word in any category depends on other elements in the GF tree, so I will call that agreement as well. So I'm not developing a new linguistic theory. I'm just like, I'm just talking about something that might be helpful when you're developing a GF grammar. specifically GF resource grammar. So not sure if that's going to be so much use in an application grammar, but
it's still a question about terminology. Sometimes we're talking about alignment, sometimes about agreement. Is there a difference?
Oh, so the question was like, what's the difference between alignment and agreement? So they are orthogonal things first. So like agreement is just that what do you mark? Like if you mark an argument in, well, what I was talking about in the verb, if that argument shows in the verb form, that's agreement. And then the alignment was like this more fine-grained, like in the Basque example, like, you know, we saw that transitive verbs marked their object with a prefix and agent with suffix. And then the question is like, okay, how about intransitive verbs? And then the answer was, oh, okay, so intransitive verbs also marks its subject with a prefix, and it's even the same morpheme as the morpheme for the object in a transitive verb. So that's alignment. I mean, like I mean, just a simpler example in English, like, you know, just in English, we say the cat sleeps and the cat eats food. The fact that we choose to put the S in both sleeps and eats food. Yeah.
So would it be right to say agreement actually target one argument only, whereas alignment we are talking about an entire phrase or an entire clause? The alignment between the verb, between the basically alignment is for various arguments together, whereas agreement is only for one argument.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that, like, alignment, yeah, I mean, yeah, you need to look at like several things. Like, of course, in agreement, you can also, like, you know, often in agreement, it's not as easy to just say that, okay, this morpheme is that, this morpheme is that. But like, yeah, you can say that, okay, do we mark this argument? Yes, no. Do we mark this argument? Yes, no. But like alignment is about, like, I mean, specifically in that context is, if we have agent and we have object, then how does the subject behave? Like agent, like object, different.
So agreement is sort of a binary relation between, let's say, verb and object. And alignment is sort of the dissolution of the whole constraints that arise due to different agreement relations, or something like that. So you have an agreement between, let's say, an adjective and its corresponding noun. If you take all that together, then you get the alignment.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, I think like with modifier agreement, we don't really have the concept of alignment. It's really it's really just about this, like, alignment is just about does the only argument of an intransitive verb behave like the agent or like the object? So it's like, that would be actually a very good question to ask just at the end of the last presentation. But like, so, but yeah, so we are not talking about alignment in this part at all. We are just, I'm going to now extend the idea of agreement from just verbs with core arguments to this completely ad hoc definition that if an orthographic word in any category in a GF tree, like, I'm going to show you tons of GF trees now, and so if we have, yeah, okay, let me just go ahead. And we're not going to talk about alignment here. So, okay, so this was that's what we've seen. This is the verb reflection, where we have a string teaches, and that form depends on this noun phrase that is another element in the GF tree. And so in GF, the inflection table contains different inflected forms of teach, and the NP is agreement chooses one. So this is like super basic. We've seen this several times. So let's take something that does not involve verbs. So here's a possessive suffix in Finnish. So this word autoni is written together, but it consists of two morphemes. Like auto means car, and ni is the first person possessive suffix. So together it means my car. Yeah, you can leave out the explicit minun, or you can say it like both are fine. So how do we do this in GF? The first strategy is with an inflection table, like this. We've seen this design with the verb forms previously. So this inflection table could contain all these forms like my car, your car, blah, blah, blah. And then the quantifier has an inherent parameter for agreement. And that would be what chooses the form autoni. Once we once we have the actual pronoun there, it's I pron, and then that chooses the form my car. So that's strategy one. And the other strategy in GF to produce orthographic words is to use the bind token. So it's this ampersand plus thing. Yeah, so that's a way to glue words together at runtime. So this means that the pieces of one orthographic word are in different categories. So we had autoni as a single word inside noun, but now we have the stem auto in the noun. And then we have the suffix ni in the quantifier. So that's, oh, we have a message in the chat. Question, does minun cause auto to have ni even if there are other words between them? Yes, it does. So it would be like my red car, my blue car, my very old car. That would happen. So yeah, then we just have like you apply add to cn to those. Okay, so that was an example of the something that behaves just like verb agreement, but it doesn't involve verbs. So now I'm going to show a case study with Somali adpositions. So that's going to be fun. I see. So all of the examples are coming from two grammar books. John Said's book from '99 and Morgan Nielsen's book from last year, which is actually still a work in progress. The Morgan Nielsen's book is freely available in this PDF. So adpositions. So in English, so here's a translation, a Somali sentence and an English translation with an English gloss also. So in English, we would have a prepositional phrase for Ali. And in Somali, instead, we have this Ali at the start of the sentence, and the adposition u is later before the verb. So, yep. By the way, so about the pronunciation, so the letter C in Somali orthography is the pharyngeal fricative. So something like Ali, something like that. I'm super not doing correctly, but if you know Arabic, it's the Ain letter thingy there. So if you see C, the letter C, then it's like, it's not the K, it's not the S, it's not the Ch, it's a pharyngeal fricative. Like, yeah, so that was a side note, but just, I thought we're gonna see so many examples. So the prepositional phrase, which in English is just a phrase, it's disconnected in Somali. So far, nothing interesting. So, but these adpositions merge with other adpositions. So here in English, we have two prepositional phrases in this way and for faro. But then in Somali, we have this way and fara as independent noun phrases. And then the two adpositions u and u, they are merged into one orthographic word, ugu. And apparently it's also a phonological word because of something tones merging. But in the context of GF, like I'm interested in orthographic words, but like this is just even more evidence that it is like it's like really a new entity basically. And this merge is obligatory, so it's not like in English where you can say like do not or don't, and they're both valid. Like this has to be ugu. Okay, so the gloss, let's look at the gloss. So again, the ugu consists of two adpositions which do not form a constituent with the noun phrases. So that's cool. But that's not all. The adpositions merge with other adpositions and object pronouns. So we have one orthographic word, noga, which contains two adpositions and one object pronoun. So no is the exclusive we. So like, you know, we, but not you. And u is the adposition for, and ka is from. So get the money for us from Ali. Yeah. So do they merge with more stuff? Of course they do. Oh, question? Yeah. Sorry, what's? Oh, all right. Yeah. That's like, yeah, not quite sure. I'm not. I think it's like, I mean, it's one of like a closed class of adverbs, which I think it's some kind of direction. Like, I think like, I would guess that maybe the like the last word maybe together would make it the meaning like get it like. Yeah, to get. Yeah, I don't remember. Like, there's a lot of these kind of abbreviations that I've never seen before. Yeah, question.
Go back one slide. The last.
Oh, the ugu. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to in for, it will be when there's a combination of in and for, it will be the ugu. Whereas if like say get this, this is given by who for who. You know, something like this key is given by me for you. So when it's a by and for, it will become something else. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, so there are different combinations when it comes to all these prepositions.
Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, there are different, like this, it just happens to be that like the u has several meanings, but if it was like here we have u and ka, like if, yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. The next thing it merges with is with negation. So okay, so this and this doesn't have negation, just to give you contrast. So I'm just using it to explain the combination. What is this kahdul? So the whole phrase, the whole adposition kahdul means over, but just the part ka is the merging adposition. So again, ka, just like we saw here, it means like from on its own. The dul is the part that gives the semantic meaning over. And also, like I've added this zero segment because the third person pronoun, like there is no third person object pronoun. So if you like, it's just implied. So if you, this is literally like I over jump can. So it's implied that, well, I can jump over something, like, so okay, so it must be like, this means like I can jump over it, him, her, whatever, what is in the context. But there is no, like, this it doesn't actually correspond to some word in the translation. So that was just to explain what is this kadul. And now we have a negation. So so first we had this over it, like it was a third person pronoun, so it didn't have, it was just a zero, but now we say over me. So like if we want to say like, yeah, jump over me, that would be just like over me is the iga, because again, ka is the part that merges and then it becomes iga when it's first person singular object pronoun. And then the negation is also merged into that thing. So we have this orthographic word igama. So it means can't from me. literally, but like the from is a part of this bigger, like the kadul is the part that means over. So like it's igamadul is like can't over me, and just igama would be just can't from me, like not from me, sorry. The can't comes from this kartid. And that's also actually in negated form. So like the verbs are also kind of complex, but I'm just talking about the adpositions. Have I lost everyone?
That's what booty means jump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's body is jump. That's like the infinitive form, because the can is the verb that inflects here. Like kara is just I can, and kartid is like you cannot. But then you also need the ma. So like the negation is marked in both the blob and in the verb form. You love to see the GF code for this. So the adpositions merge with also the impersonal subject pronoun and all of the above. So we've only seen, yeah, so like morphologically, okay, there is nothing new, but syntactically, this pronoun la is a subject, not an object like the other pronouns so far. So this is like very conveniently, this doesn't have this. So again, because this from him, that's a third person. So the third person object pronoun is just a 0. It's not marked. So this means literally like, yeah, what one for from took. So what for one took it from. And like, I mean, in the translation, there is a him, but like there is nothing in the original that says it's a him. It could be her, it, them, whatever. Okay, so yeah, and they also merge with reflexive pronoun, but I think we've seen enough. So let's. Any questions before I talk about the implementation in GF? Okay, I take it that everything is crystal clear. So, it was such a long break, like at least 10 seconds, but let's recap. So the adpositions can appear in adverbials, like jump over me. Like that's a too oblique, as we learned a new word. It's not about the abs. Like, they can be verb complements. So like in English, like wait for me, like the preposition for is actually part of the, like it's like it belongs with the verb, I would argue. And then they can also appear as question words. So the closest English translation would be like, say why as what for. So why did she do it? What for did she do it? So that's, I mean, or like how, in what way did she do it? Like you have an adposition there. So that's the place where they appear. And then what they merge with. So other adpositions, object pronouns, impersonal subject, reflexive, negation. A comment in the chat. What for did she do it? Sounds completely Singlish. No, that's cool. Yeah. So we have the information. So where do we put them in the RTL? This is just a fragment of the RTL tree of categories. So, oh yeah, sorry, it's not a tree. Actually, I mean, I'm lying when I say it's a tree. It's cyclic, and like, I mean, there should be like cycles, and this part should be repeated. Like we have a VP slash down there, but it should also feed into VP and so on. But like this is like just a good reminder. Like, okay, so yeah, to get a rough idea, or those who are familiar with RTL, a reminder, how does it go again? So if I'm like, this is like when I'm implementing a new resource grammar, and I'm doing such a complex feature like these adpositions. So I want to know like up to where is it open and when does it become fixed? So this is the answer. And so why is this? It's because of all of these things that interact with the adpositions. So most of it is in the VP level, like we have all the adverbials, reflexive, verb complement, and passive is also like, I mean, I'm deciding to use the impersonal subject as passive in GF. And of all these things, negation is the one that in the GF RGL is decided on last. So like this is not a claim about language universals, not a claim about psycholinguistics, like just in this particular library, in this particular grammar formalism, people decided to do things this way. And it has worked so far for like 40 plus languages. Right, so when you go from CL to S, the tense and polarity are seen as sort of an inflection table of the clause. So you could make another rhesus grammar with different structure, but this is how we're doing it here. Okay. So there was a lot of disclaimers. So let's make some concrete decision now. Should we make an inflection table or should we glue the morphemes together with the bind token? So a bit of recap. In the Finnish possessive suffix, either we have the full orthographic word inside an inflection table and choose right form. Or the second option is that we have the pieces of the orthographic word in different categories. So stem is in noun and suffix in quant. And what do we choose for Somali adpositions? Well, actually, we need to look at the data. So like I can't really say this because like it depends on if it's how regular it is, how many there are. So let's look at these tables now from the book. So this is this one is just the adpositions together, and that's 9. Okay, and also it looks, yeah, I mean, like a bit annoying that they change form, like, you know, kaga, like, okay, but kukka is also kaga, like, wow, and kukku is also kaga. Yeah, okay, so next we have the 7 pronouns that combine with a single adposition. And like, no need to read these random strings, like it's just give you a visual idea of the problem, of the scope of the problem. So we're answering the question, should this be an inflection table or should we glue them with a bind token? And this is 28 of these. And then we have the two adpositions and the pronoun. So that's at least 42. So just a reminder, this is how these forms are constructed. And now I'm when I'm looking at these, I'm trying to determine the morphological complexity. Like here, the adposition u causes vowel lengthening in the pronoun. So like I plus o, it's I now. And if the u in combination with a becomes o instead. And then actually it's not just the u, it's also the ku, which makes this kaga to be a long, and kaala here. And like then there's other stuff like 2 morphemes can change place. This is from another table with the subject, impersonal subject. So I would classify this as complex morphosyntactic changes. And then when we look at this, like also like this is they're pretty gentle. Like a lot of them, like it's not that many forms. Like there could be 16 combinations if we have like 4 times 4, but this is actually just 6 here. So I would say that it's a rather small amount. So this is my formula for deciding that it's a good idea to make it into an inflection table. So like it's compared to like lots of languages in the RGL have verb inflection that is much larger. So like this is nothing. It's under 100 forms basically. Okay, so and even in fact like the negation seems to be always just the string ma at the end. So I will leave the negation out of the inflection table and that part will be just glued together. So this concludes, I've decided my initial approach. I'm going to use an inflection table. And now I'm going to find out what would the table contain. So I will look at the examples a bit more carefully. And do you have any guesses, like why am I not satisfied actually with this tables? What's missing? It's because I have no clue if these are mutually exclusive. Like, because these are not just pronoun with a position, because this first list is a bunch of object pronouns, but the one with la is actually subject pronouns. So this is completely incomplete. So, okay, so right, Said's book explains what happens if we have two object pronouns with no positions. So this from page 74, like there is something called a second series pronoun. So the second series pronouns are used when two object-clitic pronouns occur in the same verbal group. This most commonly occurs when one is the object of a verb and other the object of an adposition. So, right. Okay, that's fine. So if we have like 2, 1, or 0 adpositions, and then 1 or 2 objects, okay, that's super fine. Because like it's only max one object pronoun that merges with them, and the other is put in that slot. And so if the question is like, if 2 adpositions both take a pronoun, this answers that question. So you can say, she waits for you with us. That's fine. One is the part of the verb, and what other is part of the adverbial. Okay, and how about if we have one object and one impersonal, but no adpositions? So actually, yeah, they merge together. So would be from a sentence like, you were seen, which literally is one saw you. So that would become, then you would have just the verb see in past tense, and then that would be the one you would be together as lagu. So like, that's fine. But what happens? Like, there is nothing in the whole book about this. If we have impersonal subject pronoun, some object pronoun, and an adposition or more on top of that. So that's all the book has to say about this. So like, I'm writing a GF grammar. I'm not interested in what's likely. I'm writing a generative grammar that is going to generate all combinations. So like, again, so like if you're writing a descriptive grammar book, then you go and talk to people, you listen to what they say, and then you document all the combinations that you hear. And obviously then you document everything you hear. Like you write a chapter in your linguistic grammar book about merging adpositions, and then you put everything you hear. So that's something like you decide what you describe using like the morphosyntactic criteria. But that's I'm approaching this from different angle, because I'm writing a GF grammar and I want to know, like, if I want to say like thought I had an example in my speaker notes, but Yeah, like I mean, if I want to just say that, okay, so one, okay, it was fine to say that one saw you, like you were seen, but how about you were seen in a car? Like one saw you in a car. So then we have one, you, and in. And there's nothing in the whole book that says that. So that's what strategy, like I will be happy if they tell me like they use another strategy, but just it's hard to find that. So I need to know that because otherwise my GF grammar is incomplete. So let me consult the other grammar now. So this starts with a list. And there was a similar one in the other grammar also. So yeah, it's the same thing. And then there's more explicit confirmation that, okay, so all of these elements are obligatory contracted into one word. But so this, in these contractions, certain sound changes occur. So like this grammar is actually work in progress. So this point is not there yet. So what can I do? What would you do? Well, I went to a corpus. So I started playing linguistic detective, and I had a corpus with me. So I'm guessing that let's add impersonal pronoun la, the adposition u, and the second person singular object pronoun ku. Could that merge into lagu? And then I searched in a corpus, a monolingual corpus, because I don't have any tagged ones. And so there is like 500 matches for this. So it seems to be a word, but I'm gonna have to do more detective work to figure out if that's the word I thought it was. And that took me, so that's a rabbit hole where I never reached the bottom of that. So at some point I just concluded, okay, I've spent enough time with this. Let's get back to grammar writing, and I can fill in more combinations later.
So to wrap that up, so you say you do not have sort of a finite number of combinations that you can just put into the table, but you want to analyze these combinations and sort of treat them analytically and not just treat them as sort of more things that you.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know. Like the problem is that like I don't know which strategy they would use if there is like both the impersonal subject, one or more objects, one or more appositions. So like I just concluded, okay, I don't know. I have not enough data, but I'm gonna fill in the ones that I do know. So I acknowledge I have incomplete data and I'll move on. So I started writing my parameters. So the rest of the talk is going to be GF code. So the first thing in an inflection table, it's the parameters that go to the left-hand side. Yeah, I've been calling them adpositions, but like, you know, I wrote this code 2-3 years ago, and I just used the names of the GF categories. Because the actual category is called prep, but you can realize it as any adposition, case, postposition, like anything. Okay, so the single ones are for the verbs and preps and the adverbs. So for the lexical categories. And the right, and the combination is for, sorry, I seem to miss a slide, but like the combination is for the syntactic categories like VPs and so on. Right, okay, yeah, here is it. So the single prepositions are combined to this prep combination with, this is like, just like the table that we saw like 20 slides ago, where you had the U plus O is Ugu, U plus Ka is Uga, O plus La is Ula. So this is just a direct translation for that. I do check the other direction as well. It's just like simplified. Then so this parameter for the combination, that's for the syntactic categories like VP, VP slash, CL, CL slash. And so there is the construction single, which allows a single preposition also to be a combination. And there is even, in the single ones, there is a parameter called no prep. So it's, I allow like 0, 1, or 2. It all works. Oh yeah, so if you're wondering about this line, so I actually included the impersonal subject as a preposition combination. So that's what I've been calling impersonal subject law. And the logic of this parameter is that all of them will potentially merge with object pronouns. So that's the reason why I made the, like, this might be a bit random, like why do I suddenly include like a not just adpositions but also like subject pronouns? And the answer is because of the function. All of these may merge with an object pronoun or several. Oh no, sorry, like, you know, no, they merge with one object pronoun, but like this combination is like things that merge with one object pronoun. And you can see from this to do that like the line with the impersonal is far from complete. So the law is just single law, and then this law is like law with one preposition, lagu, like it's just one preposition, but basically that line could potentially be like all of the combinations with the law. That's what I was trying to find the corpus. So these are the parameters, and now let's look at the categories. So where do we put it? Where do we put which parameters? So as I said, the single adpositions are in these lexical categories. And this parameter in the C2 is just like the kind of like the corresponding fields in English, but in English it would be just a string like 2, 4, or whatever. But here they're not strings, they're parameters because they will merge later. And what does the GF category prep need? So prep is the GF category which is used in different functions, like prep MP makes an adverb. But you can also add like this one makes a VP into a VP slash. So like you can make a VP that was already complete, expect an obligatory argument introduced by that preposition or adposition or case. Yeah, I mean it's used in different ways in the RTL. So the param preposition is in the link of the category prep, right? And that's a single preposition. So let's use an earlier example. So we have the word over, which consists of 2 orthographic words, with ka is one of the merging ones, and dul is the string. So if we suppose that we have a lexical entry for like over prep, the adposition ka is represented by a parameter, and dul is a string. Like there are 3 different fields for like, there are different, like there are all these closed classes of adverbials, or like these kind of strings that have some semantic meaning and they have very fixed positions. So that's why I have 3 places for them. It's pretty nice when you have closed classes. So like I just took these directly from the grammar book. Like they had this like short list of things that can go in each slot. So that's very nice, well-behaving language. Okay, so that was a preposition. That was the prep, the lingat for prep. Now let's look at the lingat of adv. So you remember when you apply a prep to an NP, that becomes an adv. And so the adv has a slot for the prep in 2 places, the string slots and the parameter. And it also has the slot for the MP that comes from prep MP. But we don't need the full MP, so we just have something, we've just reduced it into something that has a string and a special agreement parameter called prep agr. So yeah, so let's look at a concrete example. So we have applied the preposition, like the prep over prep kadul to a noun phrase from it. But okay, so this just happens to be an empty, like marked with zero morpheme in Somali. So it leaves no string here. It's just an empty string, but then it has this agreement, which is third person. And this is the prep agreement because it's not the same agreement that chooses the verb form. This is just a separate parameter where all the third person is lumped in one. Okay. Yeah, so just to make it a bit more interesting, if we would want to say over me, the string is still empty because all these pronouns the string will come much later. So this string, the actual string iga would be, let me draw on the screen. So this string iga would come from an inflection table we haven't seen yet, which will be like summoned by the combination of these two, but we haven't seen it yet. So there is nothing in the string field of this MP light. So, but to have an example, if we have an actual noun phrase, not a pronoun, then we would put an actual string in there. And that's just an example sentence from the grammar. Yeah, so again, all noun phrases are third person, so they don't merge with anything. I don't even need to keep track if it's singular or plural because all third person behave the same. So that was a couple of examples of how adv works. So we can go on further into VP. So I'm going to ignore a bunch of fields here and just look at those ones that are relevant for the adpositions. So this is where we have now a combination instead of single. And again, concrete example. So now we have constructed to jump over it. So in the the ka comes from the adverbial over it. It had ka in the C2 field, and the object which was just an empty string with a third person P3 prep. But now that C2 is a prep combination, and we don't have any other verb or any other adverb that introduces another adposition, then the C2 field of VP will just be single ka. Yeah. So show you later more complex combinations. And the next level is CL and CL/. So why are we still very, very discontinuous? Like we haven't decided on anything yet. No. But yeah, so the reason is that we can still add adverbials at this stage. Like these two functions, for instance, if we have CL/, we can add like arbitrary amount of adverbials to it. And also we can, when we make a CL into a QCL, we can add an IADV. So that's all these like what for, in what way, they can introduce adpositions. So we must keep it open. So let's take the example. We have added a subject. I jump over it. I skip the can jump, so just I jump over it. Let's say. And we have a subject here. Yeah, then we have something like, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I guess we don't, so there is nothing new with the adposition. It's just that it has to keep open because we can always add more. So now, how do we make this into an S? So we look at the prep agr in the object and the prep combination in the C2. And then we have the inflection table that I have promised you. So it's actually just an opera floating around in this resource module. So we're trying to find the right string for a sentence that is talking about jumping over it. So these were the preposition parameters that we're looking for. So we follow the prep agar third person. And there, so this is the branch of the table where we follow the P3 prep. And then we need to follow the single ka to another table from here. And from that table, we actually get the string ka. And that was the one we had in the example sentence. So, okay, that was for the single one. So let's take another example. This was this would be the first person single pronoun, still single ka, which is the example, you can't jump over me. So that's the over me. And again, iga comes from the inflection table and ma with the bind token. So the GF parse tree would look like this. And you can see that the string iga is the last one to be chosen. Let me draw on the screen. Like here it comes. And it comes all the way from S. Because previously, like all the way here in prep, adv, VP, CL, it was just the parameter, and it only became a string in S. Right. Any questions about this? Okay, so the last example. So let's do another one. So we have this noga now. For us from. The lexicon, we have get and money. So let's just say get is transitive and money is direct object. So then we add the adverb for us, which has the preposition u, and us is the PL1 prep. Oh, it should be also exclusive. And then we have the adverb from Ali, again, ka, and then we have a string here. So then we go to the combination rules. So we have some regular like VP that we've made with the just the ordinary compl slash, and now we start adding the two adverbs. So this is the rule, simplified GF code for the how we add an adverbial. So we look at the VP. Sorry, we look at the adverbs preposition. If it's no prep, then okay, we know that it's some lexical thing. Like maybe we just want to say get the money tomorrow, and then we have no adposition. So then we just put the string tomorrow in someplace. But if it's something else, then we look in SpeedP to see if there is a slot for it. So, right, let's add the for us. We add for us to get money. So get doesn't take any arguments with an apposition, so we match this condition. It's single, no prep. And to follow that rule, we end up with single O. So that's the value for this get the money for us. And on the second round, we have inserted the first adverbial. So we match the second condition, we have single O, and then we add this ka, and we end up with uga. So if we try to add a third adposition, that would not be grammatical because we would just add the string. But John said that doesn't happen, so like that's fine. So we have constructed the VP now, so now we can go to the inflection table. And here, object is the first person plural exclusive. So yeah, the addressee will not get the money. And the prep combination is uga. So we go here, and we get the string noga. And that's where it is. Do you see it? Trying to draw on screen. Where's my mouse? Oh, here. Yes, here it is. And so the trees look a bit interesting. Oh, sorry. Oop. I'm trying to move the zoom thingy there because it's hiding part of the slide. So this doesn't quite look like the standard English phrase structured trees. Like, so the inflection tables are inserted when at very late stage in the tree. So here in the imperative, it comes here, the string noga, and here it comes from the S. So if we compare this situation with verbs, like, so every verb is different. So of course, all of the lexical categories, be something must include an inflection table. But like the positive side is that there is only one set of these merge out positions. So they can be introduced in a syntactic function and not in a lexical function. So like, you know, we have this dual thingy, like, yeah, the string ka comes from the preposition, but, and sorry, the string dual comes from the preposition, but the ka may become something else like igama. So then that comes from UCL. So this was the last example. So I know, like, you asked last week a question like, oh, how do, like, what's the information flow of these parameters and strings? I'm like, this is one answer to the question. Like, it can be whatever you want it to be. Well, as long as it's between mildly context sensitive and context sensitive. But like, okay.
Yes, so sorry, I would not understood everything.
Yeah.
I just wonder whether you somehow try to solve some constraint system, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but you try to do that linearly and you somehow to jump back in the trees. Is that right?
I mean, I'm not sure if I understand, but like, I mean, it's just like, you know, it's because it depends. Like, the library is constructed in a way that like, it's like some things are open because you might add new adverbials up to a certain point, and then at one point, like, finally the strings are chosen, it's fine also. Then I can look at the parameters and I can introduce a string. So, and also, like, not just the string but also the word order. It's like, I didn't even talk about the differences between like negation, because like that's like another hour's talk, but like it's,
yeah. The question is whether you can sort of try to find an order in which you can sort of determine certain elements that might determine the agreement of other elements.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
So typically, well, you can do it by just carrying forward certain information, like you have a subject,
Yeah.
and then you can carry forward the way this influences the verb. But
Yeah.
what happens if so the element that influences the verb comes after the verb itself?
Yeah, I mean, then we just, I mean, that's no problem at all, because like if we introduce the verb before the thing that influences it is introduced, then we just keep it open as soon as like we propagate the inflection table. Like, inflection table means that, okay, we don't know yet. So propagate the table until we are sure, like until the element that influences it is introduced, and then we.
Yeah, but nevertheless, you assume that sort of your subtrees can be put into linear order or into partial order, so that you can sort of traverse these elements and sort of fetch the information that is missing. But is it possible that you get some sort of neutral influence between two subtrees, in that you sort of have to solve a constraint system?
Yeah, I don't know actually. Like, yeah.
So that you get some sort of unification problem. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but like if you're like, yeah, I think I'm not really well versed in the theory to answer that question, but I know there are other grammar formalisms that definitely use unification. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the talks this evening, like 8 or 9 p.m. will introduce a grammar formalism, but you can watch it on the video. I'll watch it and then I'll explain. No, like, I don't know, but like, yeah. Yeah, sorry to not give a better answer, but like, yeah, like unification is not a thing that is talked in the GFers, but it's definitely talked in the context of grammar formalisms, but not in GF. But yeah, okay, it's 12 o'clock. Like, this is my last slide, so if you want to read more. So the 2 presentations were based on series of blog posts. First part was the introduction, but they are a bit disjoint now. A second post is, I didn't present it at all. So if you're more interested in, like, this is more like these trickier things, like when it's something about semantics, how do we deal with that? So that's the second post. I didn't touch at all. And the third post is this one, which isn't written yet, but now there are slides for it. So thank you for listening, and let's go and have lunch. Any questions? If there are, you can ask on Discord. That's the word. We're going for lunch. Bye-bye. See you at, when do we have next talks actually? 4, yeah. Cool.
Thanks,
What are we
Inari.
talking about at 4? We're talking about grammarian. Why or do we need to write application grammars? And then the rest of the evening is going to be different resource grammars. Yay. So, hi Winston, did you have a comment or?
No. I was just checking the calendar as well.
I think we're muted. Sorry, actually, I can't actually hear. What's? Oh yeah, okay. Can you try speaking now?
I was just checking the calendar. That was it. When you were asking what's next. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Good. Enjoy lunch. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Thanks for